Somewhere in the distance, a clock marks another hour. But here, time moves differently, measured in tasks completed, in the steady pull of routine. Tonight our attention turns to the Sorcery Vault at Raya Lucaria. Settle into the stillness. Let your bed hold you softly. Let your thoughts grow quiet and distant. Let the last of your effort melt away. This is canon and calm. Let us begin. The iron key turns with a dull metallic click, echoing through the empty corridor. Here, within the stone heart of Raya Lucaria, the noise of the outside landscape fades into nothingness. The door moves with a slow, weighted resistance, opening into the silent archives where the secrets of the stars are kept. I step inside, and the temperature drops. A familiar chill that seeps through the layers of my scholar's robes. It is the hour when the moon is highest, casting a pale silver glow through the high, narrow windows. My shift has started, and the work of the vault requires a steady hand and a quiet mind. The smell of old parchment and cold stone fills the atmosphere, a scent that has not changed for centuries. In this place, time feels as though it has slowed, trapped within the leather bindings of 10,000 books. I reach for the first glintstone lamp, its blue light flickering as I tap the crystal base. The glow is soft, a gentle luminescence that reveals the dust motes dancing in the stillness. I must move carefully, for the floor is uneven, worn down by the footsteps of countless sorcerers who came before. My boots make a faint, measured tap against the cold masonry, a pace that marks my progress through the long aisles. My first task is to organize the scrolls of the Carolus Conspectus, which have been left in disarray after the evening lectures. These documents are brittle, their edges yellowed by the passage of decades. I pick up a bundle, feeling the rough texture of the twine against my fingers. Each scroll must be checked for dampness, as the mist from the lake often finds its way into these lower chambers. I place the bundle on a wooden trolley, the wheels creaking softly as I move toward the sorting table. The wood is dark, stained by spilled ink and the oils of many hands over many years. I begin to unroll the first parchment, the paper resisting with a dry, papery groan. It is a treatise on the celestial movements, written in a cramped, scholarly hand that requires me to lean closer to the light. Outside, the wind from Liurnia whistles through the buttresses, a lonely note that emphasizes the quiet within. I find a smudge of blue ink on the margin of a page, a sign of a student's haste or perhaps their exhaustion. I use a small, soft brush to sweep away the crumbs of dried wax from the seal. The wax is a deep purple, stamped with the crest of the Academy, a symbol of the authority that governs this place. The shelves here reach toward the high, vaulted ceiling, disappearing into the murk where the light of my lamp cannot reach. I use a long wooden pole to adjust a stray book on the third tier, watching as it slides back into its proper place. The thud it makes is satisfying, a small victory in the ongoing battle against disorder. There is a peace in this labor, a sense of belonging to a tradition that spans the history of the lands between. I move to the next section where the Olivinus scrolls are stored, their covers bound in a striking turquoise leather. These texts are colder to the touch, as if the magic within them has chilled the very material of their binding. I run my hand over the spines, feeling the embossed titles under my fingertips. One book is slightly out of alignment, and as I push it back, I feel a faint pulse of energy, a lingering spark of sorcery. The blue glintstone embedded in the wall sconces hums with a low, steady frequency, a tone that vibrates in the back of my throat. It is a comforting presence, a reminder of the power that fuels the Academy's brilliance. I pause to rest my hands on the edge of the table, taking a slow, deep breath of the cool, dry oxygen. My eyes follow the path of a single spider as it weaves a web across a corner of the shelf. I find a stray quill on the floor, its feather snapped and its nib blunt from overwork. I place it in a small tray with other discarded tools, wondering which apprentice left it behind in their frustration. The work of a sorcerer is often one of repetition, of studying the same star charts until the patterns are burned into the mind. My work is the foundation of that study, ensuring that every resource is exactly where it needs to be. In the corner of the room, a large brass orrery sits motionless, its spheres representing the heavenly bodies. I reach out and give the smallest moon a gentle push, watching as it rotates with a smooth, silent glide. The craftsmanship is impeccable, the metal polished to a mirror finish that reflects the blue glow of the room. It is a miniature version of the universe contained within a cage of wire and gear. I turn my attention back to the Karalos scrolls, carefully retying the twine on a finished bundle. The knots must be firm, but not tight enough to tear the paper. A delicate balance that I have mastered over many shifts. My fingers are stained with a faint silvery dust, a byproduct of the glintstone processing that happens in the nearby workshops. It sparkles in the light, a reminder of the wealth that flows through these halls. A distant bell tolls, a deep, resonant chime that signals the passing of another hour in the late hours. The sound travels through the stone walls, losing its sharpness until it is merely a vibration in the floor. I check my list, ticking off the completed sections with a small graphite pencil. There is still much to do, but the steady progress brings a sense of calm to my chest. I move toward the back of the vault, where the older, more delicate manuscripts are kept behind iron grates. These are the records of the early Carian royalty documents that require special handling and a specific level of humidity. I unlock the grate with a smaller silver key, the hinges singing a high, thin note as they swing open. The atmosphere here is even colder, thick with the scent of cedar and dried herbs. I pick up a volume bound in blue velvet, its surface worn smooth by the passage of time. The fabric is soft, a contrast to the hard stone and cold metal that dominates the rest of the vault. I open it carefully, breathing in the scent of aged glue and indigo dye. The illustrations inside are vibrant, the gold leaf still shimmering as if it were applied only yesterday. The silence of the archives is absolute, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the occasional crackle of the glintstone. It is a solitude that I have grown to cherish, a break from the politics and competition of the upper levels. Here, among the dead and the written, there is no judgment, only the quiet preservation of knowledge. I feel the weight of the history around me, a dense, pressing presence that is both humbling and steadying. I notice a small puddle of water near the base of a pillar, a leak from the recent rains that have battered the Academy towers. I take a cloth from my belt and soak up the moisture, careful not to let any splash onto the nearby books. The stone is porous, and I can see the dark stain where the water has seeped into the foundation. It is a reminder that even this fortress is subject to the slow erosion of the elements. I move to the sorting bin for the lazuli conspectus, where the scholars of the moon leave their discarded notes. Many of these are fragments of failed spells, scribbled in a frantic, desperate hand that speaks of long nights and little sleep. I sort them by date, placing the most recent ones on top for the master archivists to review. Some of the ink is still slightly tacky, a sign that someone was working here only moments before I arrived. I take a moment to look out of a high window, seeing the fog rolling across the lake like a white, ghostly tide. The distant lights of the sunken town flicker in the dimness, small sparks of life in a landscape that feels abandoned. The moon is a perfect glowing orb, hanging over the academy like a watchful eye. I feel a sense of connection to it, a tether that pulls at the very glintstone in my soul. My shift is only half over, and there are many more shelves to inspect before the sun rises over the peaks of Liurnia. I pick up my lamp and move toward the deeper sections of the vault, where the shadows are longer and the secrets are older. Each step is a deliberate choice, a movement through the history of my order. The work continues, steady and unchanging, as the stars turn in their eternal paths above the stone roof. I reach the level of the great orreries, where the brass gears of the universe grind in a slow celestial cadence. The smell of oil and cold metal is pervasive here, a sharp contrast to the dusty paper of the upper floors. I take a small vial of refined grease, applying a single drop to the pivot of the primary moon. The gear turns with a sigh, a metallic whisper that echoes through the vaulted ceiling. My lamp casts long dancing shadows across the star charts pinned to the walls, making the constellations seem to shift and sway. I check the alignment of the primeval current, noting a slight deviation in the trajectory of the falling stars. It is a minor thing, a tremor in the fabric of the cosmos, but it must be recorded with precision. I pick up a quill, the feather soft against my palm, and dip it into the silver ink used for celestial notation. The ink flows smoothly, leaving a trail of shimmering light on the vellum. I work in silence, the only company being the ticking of the clockwork and the distant murmur of the sea against the cliffs. The atmosphere is cold, but I find comfort in the steady, predictable movements of the spheres. It is a reminder that even in a place of chaos, there is an underlying order. I move to the next orrery, a smaller model that tracks the movements of the minor moons. One of the glass spheres is cracked, a jagged line running through the center of a painted nebula. I touch the glass gently, feeling the cold, smooth texture of the material. It will need to be replaced, but for now, I simply note the damage in my ledger. The work is slow, requiring a level of focus that leaves no room for stray thoughts. I find a certain peace in this, a liberation from the anxieties of the waking world. These late hours are mine alone, a time when the Academy belongs not to the masters, but to the caretakers of its secrets. I move toward the cleaning station, where a row of glintstone crowns sits on a velvet-lined shelf. These stone masks, carved in the likeness of the Academy founders, require constant maintenance to prevent the buildup of magical residue. I take a soft brush and a bowl of distilled water, beginning the delicate process of cleaning the Carolose mask. The stone is porous and I can feel the faint vibration of the energy stored within the glintstone eyes. It is a thrumming sensation, like the purr of a sleeping animal, beneath my fingertips. I work the brush into the crevices of the beard, removing the fine, blue dust that accumulates during the day. This dust is a byproduct of intense study, a physical manifestation of the sorceries practiced within these walls. I collect it in a small jar, for it can be refined and reused in the creation of new glintstones. The mask seems to watch me, its blank, stone eyes reflecting the light of my lamp. There is a sense of history in these objects, a weight of knowledge that has been passed down through generations. I treat them with the respect they deserve, for they are more than just tools. They are the legacy of our order. Once the Carolus mask is clean, I move on to the Olivinus, its features more angular and severe. The glintstone in this mask is a deeper shade of blue, almost indigo, and it pulses with a more aggressive energy. I can feel the tingle of static on my skin as I work, a sign that the magic is still active. I use a specialized solution to neutralize the charge, the liquid fizzing slightly as it touches the stone. The smell of ozone fills the atmosphere, a sharp, metallic scent that clears my head. I wipe away the excess moisture with a linen cloth, leaving the mask gleaming in the dim light. After the masks are finished, I turn my attention to the floor, which is littered with the remains of shattered crystals. These are the failures, the shards of stones that could not contain the power channeled through them. I use a broom made of stiff bristles to sweep them into a pile, the sound of the glass scraping against the stone, a rhythmic, grating noise. I deposit the shards into a lead-lined bin, where they will be transported to the smelting pits for disposal. The work is mundane, but necessary, for a cluttered workspace is a dangerous one in a place like this. I take a moment to stretch my back, feeling the muscles protest after hours of leaning over the bench. I walk to the edge of the balcony, looking out over the central courtyard of the academy. The fountain is still flowing, the water shimmering with a faint magical luminescence. I can see the silhouettes of the giant crabs, moving slowly through the shallows, their shells glinting in the moonlit hours. It is a peaceful scene, one that belies the intense, often volatile nature of the work that happens here. I breathe in the cool, damp atmosphere, feeling the mist from the lake on my face. It is refreshing, a brief respite from the dry, dusty interior of the vault. I notice a flicker of light in the distance, near the debate parlor. It is likely a stray glintstone pebble left behind by a student, or perhaps a lingering spirit, searching for its lost notes. I make a note to check the area later, but for now I have more pressing tasks in the lower basements. I descend another flight of stairs, the stone beneath my feet becoming more uneven and worn. This is the oldest part of the vault, where the foundations of the academy meet the living rock of the mountain. The walls are damp, with small streams of water trickling down the face of it into narrow channels. I reach the storage area for the raw glintstone, where massive clusters of the blue crystal are kept in wooden crates. The glow here is intense, a vibrant, pulsing light that illuminates the entire chamber. I can feel the power radiating from the stones, a warm, tingling sensation that makes the hair on my arms stand up. I check the seals on the crates, ensuring that the dampness has not compromised the integrity of the wood. Some of the crates are beginning to rot, the timber soft and spongy to the touch. I mark these for immediate replacement, for the glintstone must be kept dry to remain stable. I find a small cluster that has fallen from its crate, its facets reflecting the light in 1,000 different directions. I pick it up, marveling at the complexity of its structure, the way the light seems to be trapped within its depths. It is a beautiful thing, but also a dangerous one, a source of immense power that can easily spiral out of control. I place it back in its crate, carefully tucking it into the straw bedding. The work here is less about intellect and more about preservation, a quiet, steady effort to keep the Academy from falling into ruin. I move to the final row of crates, my lamp casting long, distorted shadows against the rough-hewn walls. Everything seems to be in order, the resonance of the crystals stable and the seals intact. I feel a sense of satisfaction, a quiet pride in a job well done. The evening is far from over, but the most difficult tasks are behind me, leaving only the routine inspections and the final walkthrough. I begin the climb back to the upper levels, my steps slow and measured as I transition from the depths of the mountain back to the storied halls of the scholars. The ascent from the damp cellar brings a noticeable change in the atmosphere, as the biting chill of the stone gives way to the dry, dusty scent of the archives. My boots click against the polished marble of the main floor, the echo traveling far into the vaulted ceilings above, where the shadows of the rafters hide the true height of the room. I reach the base of the great shelves, where the knowledge of 1,000 years is bound in leather and wood. The glintstone lamps hum with a low, steady note, casting a pale indigo light across the spines of the books, creating a landscape of indigo and silver that stretches into the distance. I take hold of the brass ladder, its metal cool and smooth against my palms, and begin the slow climb to the upper tiers. The wheels groan softly as I slide the ladder along its track, a measured pace that matches the stillness of the late hour, far removed from the frantic energy of the day. Up here the dust is thicker, a fine grey powder that coats the edges of the scrolls and the tops of the heavy tomes. I use a soft brush to clear it away, watching the particles dance in the beam of my lantern before they fall back into the shadow of the shelves. One particular shelf is dedicated to the study of the stars, its volumes filled with charts of constellations that no longer appear in the sky. I run my fingers over the embossed covers, feeling the texture of the gold leaf and the deep indentations of the script left by scholars long since past. It is a lonely task, but there is a comfort in the repetition, a sense of order in a place that often feels chaotic during the hours of instruction. I move from shelf to shelf, checking the titles against my list, ensuring that nothing has been misplaced by an over-eager apprentice or a distracted professor. The silence of the room is absolute, broken only by the occasional pop of a cooling lamp or the distant muffled call of an owl from the woods outside. I pause to look out of a narrow window, seeing the moonlight reflecting off the fog that blankets the lake below the academy walls. The fog is like a living thing, shifting and swirling in the breeze, obscuring the landscape until only the tallest towers of the institution remain visible. It is a reminder of the isolation of this place, a sanctuary of learning perched high above the troubles of the lands between. I descend the ladder and move toward the central desk, where a large astrolabe sits in a state of perpetual motion. Its brass rings spin with a faint, metallic whisper, tracking the movement of celestial bodies that I will never see with my own eyes. I check the oil in the mechanism, adding a few drops to the gears to ensure they continue to turn without friction or heat. The smell of the lubricant is sharp and industrial, a stark contrast to the sweet floral scent of the dried herbs kept in jars on the nearby tables. These herbs are used to sharpen the mind during long hours of study, their essence released by the heat of the lamps that line the desks. I replace a few of the older bundles, the dried stems snapping with a crisp, satisfying noise in the quiet of the room. My path takes me past the stone effigies of the former masters, their blank eyes staring out into the dimness as if still watching over their students. I wonder if they ever walked these halls at this hour, feeling the same weight of responsibility that I do now. Perhaps they too found peace in the mundane chores, the simple acts of maintenance that keep this institution functioning through the ages. I adjust a crooked frame on the wall, a map of the stars that has begun to peel at the corners of the parchment. The adhesive is old and brittle, so I apply a small amount of fresh paste, pressing the parchment back into place with a steady, careful hand. It is a small repair, but it matters, just as every other task tonight matters, in its own way. I move toward the balcony that overlooks the courtyard, the transition from the stuffy interior to the fresh evening breeze, a welcome relief. The stone railing is cold under my hands, damp with the moisture of the low-hanging clouds that drift through the spires. Below, the courtyard is empty, the fountains silent, and the paths cleared of the day's traffic, leaving only the statues to stand guard. It is a rare moment of stillness in a place that is usually bustling with the energy of students and the heat of magical practice. I take a moment to breathe, the coolness of the atmosphere filling my lungs and clearing the cobwebs from my head. The work is far from finished, but I feel a sense of progress, a steady movement toward the end of my shift and the coming dawn. I turn back to the interior, my eyes adjusting once more to the blue-tinted light of the glintstone lamps. There is a section of the library that houses the forbidden texts, its entrance guarded by a sturdy iron gate that hums with a faint enchantment. The lock is complex, a puzzle of gears and tumblers that requires a specific sequence to open without triggering the alarms. I check the mechanism, ensuring that it remains secure and that no one has attempted to bypass the wards during the quiet hours. Everything is as it should be, the gate solid and the enchantments holding firm against any potential intrusion. I move on. My footsteps light as I approach the bridge that connects this tower to the next wing of the archives. The bridge is narrow, and the wind, it whips through the gaps in the stonework with a persistent whistle that echoes against the spires. I feel the grit of the stone under my boots, a texture that is familiar and grounding in this high, lonely place. The blue light from the crystals embedded in the walls, it casts long, thin shadows across the floor, stretching out like fingers into the path ahead. I walk with a slow, measured pace, my eyes scanning the masonry for any signs of erosion or instability caused by the constant exposure to the elements. To my left, the crystalline formations, they grow in clusters, like frozen blooms of blue glass, emerging from the very heart of the mountain. I stop to inspect a particularly large specimen, its facets catching the dim light and refracting it into 1,000 tiny sparks that dance upon the ceiling. There is a faint vibration, a hum that resides in the marrow of the stone, as if the magic of this place is a living thing, breathing in time with the ocean below. I run a gloved finger over the cold, sharp edge of a crystal, checking for any signs of overgrowth that might obstruct the passage during the busier hours of the day. I reach the entrance to the astrological observation deck. The great wooden doors. They are reinforced with bands of iron that have been etched with protective runes. The metal is cold to the touch, and the hinges, they give a low, mournful groan as I push them open, revealing the immense space that lies within. The ceiling is a dome of glass and brass, a complex map of the heavens that rotates slowly, driven by a series of unseen gears and counterweights. I stand in the center of the room. The scale of the architecture, it makes me feel small, but not insignificant, a part of a much larger and older design. My first task here is to tend to the great telescope, an instrument of incredible precision that requires constant care to remain functional. The brass casing is tarnished in places where the damp atmosphere has left its mark, and I begin the slow process of polishing the metal with a soft cloth. I work in circular motions. The repetitive movement, it has a calming effect on my mind, allowing me to focus on the task at hand and nothing else. The smell of the polish is sharp and metallic, a scent that I have come to associate with the quiet hours and the solitude of my shift. I move to the lenses, which are made of the purest glintstone and ground to a perfect curve by the hands of master craftsmen. Even a single speck of dust, it could distort the view of the distant stars, and so I use a brush of fine hair to sweep away any debris that has accumulated since the previous evening. The glass is so clear that it almost seems to disappear, leaving only the reflection of the stars that shine down through the dome above. I take a moment to look through the eyepiece. The clarity of the image, it is breathtaking, revealing worlds that are so far away they are beyond my comprehension. Beneath the observation deck, the clockwork mechanism. It continues its tireless work, the gears turning with a deliberate and unwavering tempo. I descend a spiral staircase, the metal steps ringing with a hollow tone as I make my way down into the heart of the machine. The oil here is thick and smells of burnt amber, a lubricant that is necessary to keep the massive cogs from grinding against one another. I check the levels in the reservoirs, adding a few measures of the golden fluid where it is needed, the liquid flowing smoothly into the hungry mouths of the gears. There is a fine layer of blue dust that seems to settle on everything in this part of the academy, a byproduct of the magical energy that permeates the stone. I take up a long-handled broom and begin to sweep the floor, the bristles making a soft, shushing noise as they gather the dust into small piles. It is a humble task, but it is necessary to prevent the grit from entering the delicate parts of the machinery and causing a malfunction. I work my way around the base of the telescope mount, the piles of dust glowing with a faint, ethereal light in the dimness of the lower chamber. I transition into the crystal growing chamber, a room that is kept at a constant humid temperature to encourage the development of new glintstone shards. The atmosphere here is thick and carries the scent of damp earth and ozone, a combination that is both refreshing and slightly sharp on the back of my throat. Rows of stone troughs. They are filled with a nutrient-rich solution in which the crystals are submerged, their growth monitored by a series of delicate instruments. I check the gauges, the needles flickering slightly as they record the subtle changes in the magical pressure of the room. In the corner of the chamber, A small forge burns with a low blue flame, its heat used to temper the newly harvested crystals and make them more resilient. I use a pair of long tongs to move a tray of shards from the cooling rack to the workbench, the glass clinking together like a handful of coins. Each shard is unique, with its own pattern of inclusions and its own particular shade of blue, a testament to the natural variation of the magical process. I sort them by size and quality, placing them into padded boxes that will be transported to the workshops when the sun rises. The crystals themselves, they emit a low, pulsing note, a sound that is almost too deep to hear, but that can be felt in the very bones of my chest. It is a soothing frequency, a constant reminder of the power that is contained within these small, fragile objects. I spend a few minutes simply listening, letting the vibration wash over me and clear my mind of any lingering thoughts of the world outside. In this room, there is only the growth of the stone and the steady heat of the forge, a cycle that has continued for as long as anyone can remember. I move to the archives of the stars, a small library that is dedicated to the study of celestial movements and the interpretation of the heavens. The shelves are packed with scrolls, their parchment yellowed with age, and their edges frayed from centuries of use. I carefully reorganize a section that has been left in disarray by a hurried student, the paper crinkling softly as I roll the scrolls back into their protective tubes. Each document is a piece of history, a record of a discovery that was made by someone who stood in this very spot many years ago. Leaving the archives, I enter a narrow corridor where the only light comes from a series of floating candles that drift lazily through the atmosphere. They move in response to the subtle currents of air, their flames dancing and casting flickering shadows against the damp stone walls. I reach out and adjust the height of one that has drifted too low, the wax warm against my palm as I guide it back into its proper position. The corridor is silent, save for the faint drip of water from a crack in the ceiling, a rhythmic noise that marks the passage of time in this forgotten corner of the academy. I find a glintstone lamp that has begun to flicker, its light fading as the energy within the crystal is slowly depleted. I unscrew the brass housing and replace the spent shard with a fresh one, the new crystal immediately bursting into a steady, brilliant blue glow. The light reveals the intricate carvings on the walls, depictions of the moon and the stars that have been worn smooth by the touch of countless hands. I take a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship, the way the stone has been shaped, to capture the essence of the night sky in such a permanent form. I pause at a window that looks out over the lake of Liurnia, the landscape shrouded in a thick silver fog that obscures the ground below. Only the tops of the tallest trees and the spires of the distant ruins are visible above the mist, like islands in a sea of clouds. The moon is high, and its light reflects off the surface of the fog, creating a soft, ethereal glow that illuminates the entire valley. It is a sight of immense beauty, and I feel a sense of peace as I gaze out at the quiet, sleeping world that lies beneath the protection of the academy. On a nearby desk, I find a collection of notes that have been forgotten by a student, the ink still fresh and the quill resting where it was last used. The handwriting is cramped and filled with corrections, a sign of the struggle to understand the complex theories of Glintstone sorcery. I carefully gather the papers and place them in a neat stack, weighting them down with a small stone so they do not blow away in the draught from the window. It is a small gesture, but I know how much work goes into these studies, and I would not want their efforts to be lost to the wind. I continue my rounds, moving into a gallery that houses a collection of magical artifacts, each one kept behind a pane of thick, reinforced glass. I use a clean cloth to wipe away the fingerprints that have been left on the display cases, the glass gleaming under the light of my lamp. Inside I see staves of polished wood, robes of fine silk, and amulets of silver and gold, all of them imbued with the power of the stars. They are relics of a storied past, and I treat them with the respect that they deserve as I move from one case to the next. The stone steps that lead to the upper levels, they are worn down in the center, a testament to the thousands of scholars who have climbed them over the years. I feel the weight of that history with every step I take, the cold stone pressing against the soles of my boots as I ascend into the heights of the tower. The air becomes thinner here, and the chill of the late hour, it begins to seep through my clothes, but I do not mind the cold. It is a reminder that I am alive, and that I have a purpose in this grand and mysterious place. I reach the balcony that overlooks the debate parlor. The large room below now empty and silent, its benches arranged in neat rows. The lectern stands at the far end, a solitary figure in the dim light, as if waiting for the next speaker to take their place. I look down at the floor, which is tiled in a pattern of blue and white marble, the surface polished to a high shine that reflects the stars above. It is hard to imagine the energy and the passion that fills this room during the day, when the air is thick with the sound of voices and the heat of intellectual pursuit. My path takes me past the grand clock, its face a masterpiece of brass and silver that tracks not only the hours but the phases of the moon and the positions of the planets. I listen to the steady tick of the internal mechanism, a sound that is as reliable as the rising of the sun or the turning of the tides. I check the alignment of the hands, ensuring that the clock remains accurate and that it continues to serve as the heartbeat of the Academy. Everything is in order, the gears meshing perfectly and the pendulum swinging with a grace that is almost hypnotic. I move toward the iron elevator that will take me down to the lower levels where the final tasks of my shift are waiting to be completed. The cage is made of heavy bars that have been rusted by the damp air, but the mechanism is still strong and the chain is well oiled. I pull the lever, and the elevator begins its slow descent, the stone walls of the shaft sliding past me in a blur of grey and brown. As I descend, I feel a sense of satisfaction, knowing that I have done my part to maintain the order and the beauty of this place as I move toward the next wing of the archives. The iron cage comes to a halt, with a dull, metallic thud that vibrates through the soles of my boots. I slide the gate open, the metal groaning against years of accumulated salt and moisture. The atmosphere down here is different from the spires above. It is thick with the scent of wet stone and the sharp ozone tang of raw magic. I step out into the flickering light of the wall-mounted torches, their blue flames casting long dancing shadows across the damp floor. My first task in this subterranean wing is to inspect the crates of raw glintstone that have been brought down for processing. These stones, plucked from the mines or harvested from the crystal tunnels, hum with a persistent low frequency that I can feel in my very bones. I walk along the rows of wooden boxes, checking the wax seals that keep the volatile energy contained within. One crate has a hairline fracture running down its side, and a small, jagged sprout of blue crystal has pushed its way through the grain. I reach for my silver shears, the metal cool against my palm as I prepare to prune the overgrowth. The snap of the crystal as it breaks is a sharp, crystalline note that echoes through the quiet chamber. I carefully collect the glowing fragments, placing them into a lead-lined pouch so they do not seed further growth in the cracks of the masonry. It is a delicate process requiring a steady hand and a patient mind, as the energy within the stone is prone to sudden flares. The moisture here is a constant companion, a reminder of the immense lake that sits directly above our heads. I can hear the slow, measured drip of water falling from the vaulted ceiling into the small puddles that have formed on the uneven floor. Each drop creates a series of concentric circles that catch the blue light of the torches, like ripples in a miniature subterranean sea. I move my lantern to illuminate the next row of shelves where the discarded scrolls are kept in their rotting leather cases. These are the failed experiments, the theories that did not survive the rigors of the Academy's scrutiny. I run my fingers over the spines, feeling the texture of the parchment, which has become soft and pliable from the humidity. There is a certain sadness in these forgotten words, the remnants of scholars who spent their lives chasing a star that they could never quite reach. I straighten a leaning stack of manuscripts, ensuring that the titles are still legible, even if the knowledge within them is considered obsolete. Further down the hall I come across a collection of stone masks, the visages of former students who have moved on, or perhaps simply vanished. The Carola's crowns, with their long, flowing beards of carved stone, stare back at me with blank, unseeing eyes. I take a piece of soft cloth and begin to wipe the fine layer of dust from the brow of a particularly ornate mask. The stone is cold and unforgiving, yet there is a dignity in its silence, a reflection of the serious nature of the work we do here. The silence of the vault is not absolute. It is filled with the murmurs of the Academy's foundations, the groaning of the stone under the weight of the towers above. I find comfort in this environment, the isolation providing a space for reflection and quiet thought. I check the temperature of the room using a small brass thermometer that hangs from a silver chain on the wall. The mercury is low, indicating that the chill of the evening has reached even these deep and secluded chambers. I move toward the back of the storage area, where the larger, more unstable artifacts are kept behind heavy iron bars. The resonance here is stronger, a vibrating pulse that makes the hair on my arms stand on end. I do not enter these cages unless absolutely necessary, as the magic contained within is still very much active. I simply observe from the threshold, ensuring that the glowing seals on the doors remain intact and that the shadows within are not moving. A small desk sits in the corner, its surface covered with old ledgers and a half-melted blue candle. I sit down for a brief moment to record my findings, the scratch of my quill, the only noise in the immediate vicinity. I write out the numbers: 247 crates inspected, 12 scrolls salvaged from the damp, and 1 mask cleaned. The ink dries quickly, leaving a dark, permanent record of my presence in this hidden corner of the Academy. As I stand up, I notice a faint, flickering light coming from the doorway that leads to the forbidden section. It is a pale, shimmering glow that seems to beckon with the promise of deeper mysteries and darker secrets. I know that my shift is not yet over, and that there is still much work to be done before the sun rises. I pick up my lantern, the flame burning with a steady, reassuring light, and turn my steps toward the final and most challenging part of my journey. The stone floor beneath my feet is worn smooth by the passage of many feet over many centuries. I think of the people who have walked this path before me, the custodians and the keepers, who have maintained the order of the vault. We are the silent guardians, the ones who ensure that the knowledge of the stars is preserved for those who will come after us. It is a responsibility that I carry with pride, even in the dimness and the cold of the lower levels. The passage narrows, the walls closing in as I move deeper into the heart of the mountain. The air is cooler now, and the scent of the lake is stronger, a damp, earthy smell that fills my senses. I can hear the movement of the water against the outer walls, a low, rhythmic thrum that is both soothing and unsettling. I press on, my lantern casting a small circle of light in the gathering murk as I approach the great iron door of the Forbidden Archive. This door is bound in silver and glintstone, its face etched with warnings in a language that few now speak. I feel the pulse of the magic as it stirs into a low resonance, reacting to the proximity of my lantern. It is a weighted presence, a pressure that sits in the back of the throat, tasting of cold mountain spring. I take the key from my belt, the silver warm from my hand, and insert it into the lock with a slow, deliberate motion. The tumblers click into place, one by one, a series of small, metallic heartbeats that echo in the narrow hall. I push against the door, the hinges silent and well-oiled as the archive opens to reveal its secrets. The atmosphere inside is perfectly still, a pocket of time that has been frozen in the heart of the Academy. I step across the threshold, the light of my lantern catching the glint of 1,000 crystal shards that line the walls. I see rows of jars filled with a glowing blue liquid that swirls with its own internal current. These are the essences of the stars, captured and refined by the Academy's most talented sorcerers. I check the levels in each jar, ensuring that they are stable and that the glass remains clear and unclouded. It is a task that requires the utmost care, as a single crack could release a torrent of energy that would consume the entire vault. I find a pedestal in the center of the room, on which a single glowing book lies open. The pages are made of a material that looks like woven light, the words shifting and changing as I look at them. I do not read the words, as they are not meant for my eyes, but I ensure that the book is properly aligned with the stars above. I adjust the position of the pedestal by a fraction of an inch until the glow of the pages settles into a steady, calm radiance. My work in the Forbidden Archive is nearly complete, and I feel a sense of relief as I turn to leave. The energy of the room is oppressive, a constant weight that makes it difficult to breathe for long. I step back into the hallway and close the iron door, the sound of the lock engaging a final, definitive note. I'm glad to be back in the more familiar surroundings of the lower storage bay. I make my way back to the elevator, the stone walls sliding past me as I ascend once more toward the upper levels. The evening is nearing its end, and the first faint light of the morning is beginning to touch the peaks of the academy. I can feel the shift in the environment as the world outside wakes up and the quiet hours come to a close. I am tired, but I am content, knowing that the vault is safe for another day. I reach the main floor of the library. The air here warmer and more welcoming than the cold of the basement. I return my lantern to its hook and hang, my silver shears back on the rack in the custodian's office. I take a moment to look at the stars through the great glass dome, the constellations fading as the sun rises. It has been a long and quiet shift, a journey through the history and the magic of this storied place. I walk toward the bridge that leads away from the academy, my footsteps light on the stone as I prepare to return to my own home. The lake below is a plain of silver glass, reflecting the colors of the dawn in its still waters. I look back at the spires of Raya Lucaria one last time, feeling a deep and lasting connection to the work I do here. The journey continues as the morning mist begins to lift from the path ahead. The morning mist may rise over the Liurnian waters, but here, in the sublevels of the academy, the shadow remains absolute. I descend the spiral stairs where the damp stone smells of salt and forgotten things. My lantern casts a long amber glow against the walls, illuminating the patches of blue moss that thrive in this cold environment. I arrive at the entrance of the polishing chambers, a place where the raw essence of the stars is given its form. The iron door is thick and cold to the touch, its hinges groaning with the weight of centuries. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with the scent of ozone and pulverized mineral, a sharp metallic tang that catches in the throat. My first task is to inspect the sorting trays where the evening harvest of glintstone shards has been laid out. These fragments are rough and jagged, their edges sharp enough to draw blood if handled without care. I use a pair of wooden tongs to move the pieces, looking for any sign of corruption or instability in the crystalline structure. Each shard vibrates with a low internal pulse, a tiny echo of the great current that flows through the cosmos. I listen to the tone they emit, a soft humming that resonates in the bones of my hands. If a shard sounds flat or discordant, it must be set aside for the master sorcerers to examine or discard. I find a cluster of blue crystals that seem to be fused together in a chaotic tangle. They are beautiful in their disorder, but they are useless for the precise work of the Academy. I place them in a separate bin, their glow fading as they are removed from the presence of their kin. Next, I move to the grinding stones, which are powered by the slow, constant flow of an underground stream. The stones are made of a dense, dark granite, and they turn with a steady, relentless pace. I add a few drops of alchemical oil to the bearings, ensuring that the movement remains smooth and silent. I take a handful of the smaller shards and place them on the stone, the friction creating a shower of tiny blue sparks. The sparks dance in the dimness like miniature stars falling to the floor and vanishing in an instant. It is a hypnotic process, one that requires a steady hand and a patient mind. As I work, I think of the scholars who will eventually use these stones to channel their power. They seek to understand the mysteries of the universe, to grasp the secrets of the stars and the moon. But for me, the mystery is in the material itself, in the way it feels and the way it responds to the touch. I finish with the first batch and move to the polishing wheel, which is covered in a layer of fine silk. I use a paste made of crushed pearls and moon dew to give the crystals their final luster. The wheel spins with a soft whirring noise, a contrast to the grinding stone's deeper note. I hold a single shard against the cloth, watching as the rough exterior is worn away, revealing the clear, brilliant heart within. The light from my lantern catches the facets, creating a kaleidoscope of blue and silver on the ceiling. It is a moment of quiet beauty in the midst of my mundane labor. I repeat the process for each of the shards, my movements becoming a reflexive measure of the passing time. The pile of finished stones grows slowly, each one a perfect gleaming jewel, ready for the sorcerer's staff. I feel a sense of pride in my work, knowing that I have played a small part in the Academy's great endeavors. The chill in the chamber deepens as the early morning hours progress, but I do not feel the cold. The work keeps me warm, and the constant glow of the crystals provides a sense of comfort. I am alone in this subterranean world, but I am not lonely. I take a break to check the water levels in the cooling tanks, where the larger crystals are kept. The water is clear and still, reflecting the arched ceiling and the distant flickering torches. I add a measure of salt to the tank to maintain the correct density for the stones to rest in. I notice a small crack in one of the stone basins, and I make a mental note to repair it before my next shift. It is a minor issue, but in a place like this, even the smallest flaw can lead to disaster. I am the guardian of this vault, and it is my duty to ensure its integrity. I return to my workbench and begin to pack the finished stones into wooden crates lined with wool. I handle each one with the same care as if it were a fragile egg, ensuring that they do not touch one another. The crates are heavy when full, and I use a small cart to transport them to the storage area. Is a maze of shelves and cupboards, each one labeled with strange and archaic symbols. I find the correct location for the new shipment and slide the crates into place with a satisfying thud. The task is complete, and I feel a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I take a moment to sit on a stone bench and listen to the stillness of the vault. The only noise is the distant drip of water and the faint hum of the crystals on the shelves. It is a peaceful environment, a sanctuary from the chaos of the outside world. I look at my hands, which are stained with blue dust and silver oil, a testament to the work I have done. They are the hands of a laborer, but they are also the hands of a craftsman. I am content with my place in this storied institution, and I find meaning in the quiet routines of my life. I stand up and stretch my aching muscles, the joints popping in the silence. I pick up my lantern and begin the long climb back to the upper levels where the world is waking up. The shift is over, and I am ready for the rest that awaits me. As I ascend, I see the first rays of sunlight filtering through the high windows of the library. The blue light of the glintstone fades in the presence of the sun, and the academy takes on a different character. I walk toward the exit, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls as I move toward the next chapter of my morning. The morning light filters through the high arched windows of the library, casting long distorted shadows across the floor. I move slowly, feeling the change in the atmosphere as the damp chill of the vaults is replaced by a crisp, biting cold. The dust motes dance in the beams of gold and blue, creating a shimmering haze that seems to hang in the stillness. My boots click against the polished marble, a sharp, lonely note in the quiet of the gallery. I reach the upper balcony where the breeze from the lake whistles through the stone balustrades. The mist below is thick and white, obscuring the base of the academy and making the towers feel as though they are floating in a sea of clouds. I take a moment to lean against the cold stone and breathe in the fresh, sharp scent of the morning. My lungs feel clear, and the fatigue in my limbs seems to ease for a brief interval. I move toward the row of mechanical sentries that stand guard along the walkway, their metal bodies gleaming in the early light. They are motionless, for now their gears at rest, but I know that they will soon be active, patrolling the halls with tireless efficiency. I take a small vial of silver oil from my pouch and begin to lubricate the joints of the nearest puppet. The oil is cold and viscous, but it flows easily into the intricate clockwork mechanisms. I work with a steady hand, ensuring that every cog and lever is well coated to prevent any grinding or friction. The metal feels smooth and icy under my fingers, a contrast to the warmth of the oil. I can hear the faint click of the internal springs as I move the puppet's arm to distribute the lubricant. It is a delicate task, requiring patience and a gentle touch, but I find it meditative. Once the first sentry is prepared, I move to the next, repeating the process with the same careful attention to detail. There are 12 of these machines in this section of the academy, and it takes me nearly an hour to finish them all. By the time I am done, my hands are coated in a thin layer of silver grease, and the sun has risen higher in the sky. The light is now a brilliant gold, reflecting off the blue glintstone embedded in the walls. I walk further along the balcony, toward the entrance of the grand observatory, where the large telescopes are housed. The doors are made of thick oak, reinforced with iron bands, and they creak loudly as I push them open. The interior of the observatory is dim and cool, the only illumination coming from the high skylights. The smell of old parchment and brass polish is strong. Here, a familiar and comforting scent. I approach the largest telescope, which is pointed toward the stars that are now fading in the morning sky. The brass barrel is covered in a fine layer of dust, and I use a soft cloth to wipe it clean. The metal shines under my hand, revealing the intricate engravings of constellations and lunar phases. I check the glass lens for any smudges or scratches, but it is clear and flawless. I adjust the focus knobs, feeling the smooth resistance of the gears as they turn within the housing. The mechanism is a masterpiece of engineering, a testament to the skill of the Academy's craftsmen. I spend several minutes ensuring that the telescope is properly aligned for the next set of observations. It is a quiet and solitary task, but I feel a sense of pride in maintaining these instruments of discovery. I move to the smaller telescopes that are arranged in a circle, around the main instrument and repeat the cleaning process. Each one is unique, designed for a specific purpose, and I treat them with the same reverence. The silence in the observatory is profound, broken only by the soft rustle of my cloth and the occasional chirp of a bird outside. It is a place of learning and reflection, and I feel honored to be its caretaker. I finish my work in the observatory and head back out onto the balcony, where the sun is now fully above the horizon. The mist in the valley has begun to dissipate, revealing the shimmering waters of the lake and the distant ruins of the town. I can see the small boats of the Glintstone harvesters dotting the surface of the water, their lanterns still visible in the early light. It is a beautiful sight, a reminder of the life that exists beyond the Academy's walls. I descend a spiral staircase that leads to the lower classrooms, where the apprentices will soon gather for their lessons. The rooms are empty. For now, the desks and chairs arranged in neat rows, waiting for the day to begin. I walk through the aisles, checking each station for any forgotten items or spilled ink. I find a few stray scrolls and a broken quill, which I place in a bin for disposal. I reach the front of the room where the instructor's podium stands, and I use a damp cloth to wipe the chalkboard. The white dust of the chalk clouds, the atmosphere for a moment before settling on the floor. I write the date and the title of the first lecture on the board in a clear and steady hand. It is a simple task, but it helps to establish a sense of order and preparation for the coming day. I check the cupboards at the back of the room, ensuring that they are stocked with fresh parchment and ink for the students. I find that one of the shelves is nearly empty, and I make a note to bring more supplies from the storeroom later. The work is never truly finished, but I take satisfaction in the small improvements I make each day. I am a vital part of the Academy's machinery, even if my contributions are often unnoticed. I leave the classroom and walk toward the great hall where the morning meal will soon be served. The smell of fresh bread and roasted meat wafts through the corridors, making my stomach rumble with hunger. I have not eaten since the previous evening, and I am looking forward to a warm meal and a few hours of sleep. The transition from the quiet hours to the bustle of the day is always a bit jarring, but I have grown accustomed to it. I pass the entrance to the debate parlor, where a group of scholars is already gathered discussing the latest theories of glintstone resonance. Their voices are low and earnest, a constant murmur that echoes in the hallway. I do not stop to listen, as I have my own duties to attend to, and I am eager to reach the kitchens. I move quickly through the crowd, my presence largely ignored by the preoccupied academics. I reach the kitchen and am greeted by the warmth and noise of the staff preparing the meal. The clatter of pots and pans and the shouting of orders is a sharp contrast to the silence of the vaults. I find a small table in the corner and sit down, waiting for a bowl of porridge and a mug of ale. The food is simple, but it is filling, and it provides the energy I need to finish my shift. As I eat, I reflect on the work I have done during the past few hours and the sense of accomplishment it brings. I have ensured that the crystals are safe, the machines are maintained, and the classrooms are ready for the students. It is a quiet and humble existence, but it is one that I value and respect. I am a guardian of knowledge, a keeper of the Academy's traditions, and I take my responsibilities seriously. I finish my meal and stand up, feeling a bit more revived and ready for the final tasks of my shift. I walk back toward the main entrance of the Academy, where the large iron gates are being opened for the day. The sound of the heavy chains rattling and the gates creaking on their hinges is a signal that my time here is almost at an end. I watch as the first visitors and students begin to arrive, their faces full of wonder and anticipation. I move to the side, allowing the crowd to pass, and I head toward the small stone cottage where I live. It is a modest dwelling located just outside the Academy's walls, but it is a sanctuary for me. I look forward to the warmth of my bed and the peaceful sleep that awaits me after a long and productive night. The world is waking up, but for me, the day is just beginning to close. I reach my door and turn the key in the lock. The familiar click, a welcome sound. I step inside and close the door behind me, shutting out the noise and light of the morning. The interior of the cottage is dim and quiet, a perfect environment for rest. I remove my boots and cloak and lie down on the soft mattress, feeling the tension leave my body. As I drift into sleep, I am already thinking about the tasks that await me when I return to the Academy later this evening. The morning light filters through the small window of my cottage, casting long, pale shadows across the floorboards. I am safe here in the quiet of my own space, far from the humming crystals and the cold stone of the vault. The weight of the shift is a memory fading like the mist over the lake as I sink into the softness of my bed. My breath is slow and steady, a gentle pulse that matches the stillness of the room. Outside, the birds are starting to sing, their voices a delicate melody that carries on the morning breeze. I can hear the rustle of the leaves in the trees and the distant murmur of the water hitting the shore. It is a peaceful environment, one that is a welcome change from the oppressive silence of the academy. I close my eyes and let the warmth of the sun wash over me, feeling the tension leave my muscles. In my mind, I can still see the blue glow of the Glintstone, the way it pulses with a life of its own. It is a beautiful and terrifying thing, a source of great power and also great danger. I have spent many years studying its properties, and I have learned to respect its strength. But for now, I am content to let it be and to focus on the simple pleasures of my life. I think of the scholars I passed on my way out, their faces etched with lines of worry and concentration. They are so consumed by their studies, so driven by their desire for knowledge, that they often forget to appreciate the beauty of the landscape around them. I am glad that I am not one of them, that I have found a way to balance my work with my life. It is a hard thing to achieve, but it is essential for one's well-being. As I drift closer to sleep, my thoughts turn to the history of the Academy and the many secrets it holds. It is a place of great mystery, a repository of knowledge that has been gathered over many centuries. There are stories of powerful sorcerers who once walked its halls and of great discoveries that were made within its walls. It is a privilege to be a part of such a storied institution, and I take my role as a guardian seriously. I remember the first time I entered. The vault, the sense of awe and wonder. I felt as I gazed upon the immense collection of crystals. It was a sight I will never forget, a testament to the power and ingenuity of the human spirit. Since then, I have spent countless hours in that space, and I have come to know its every corner and crevice. It is a second home to me, a place where I feel at peace and at ease. The atmosphere in the cottage is getting warmer now as the sun rises higher in the sky. I can feel the heat on my face and the way it makes my skin tingle. It is a pleasant sensation, one that helps me to relax even further. I am so tired, so ready for the rest that awaits me, and I am grateful for the opportunity to sleep. I think of the simple tasks I performed during my shift, the way I carefully cleaned the crystals and checked the machines. It was not exciting work, but it was important, and I took pride in doing it well. There is a certain satisfaction that comes from a job well done, a sense of accomplishment that is hard to find elsewhere. I am glad that I can contribute to the Academy in my own small way. My dreams are starting to take shape now, a kaleidoscope of colors and images that dance behind my eyelids. I see the blue light of the Glintstone, the grey stone of the vault, and the green leaves of the trees. I see the faces of the scholars, the noise of the kitchen, and the silence of the library. It is a strange and wonderful landscape, one that is both familiar and new. I am flying now over the lake of Liurnia, the water shimmering in the moonlight. I can feel the wind in my hair and the spray of the water on my skin. It is a feeling of total freedom, of being able to go anywhere and do anything. I am no longer bound by the constraints of my life, no longer limited by my responsibilities. I reach the academy, and I fly through the open gates into the main courtyard. The space is empty and quiet, the only movement being the flickering of the torches. I move through the hallways, past the classrooms and the libraries, until I reach the entrance to the vault. The door is open, and I step inside, the blue light of the crystals washing over me. I am standing in the center of the room, surrounded by the immense power of the Glintstone. I can feel it pulsing through my body, a surge of energy that is both exhilarating and terrifying. I am a part of it, now, a part of the magic that flows through the academy. It is a moment of pure connection, of being one with the universe. But then the dream shifts to a different scene, and I find myself back in my cottage, lying in my bed. The morning light is stronger now, and the room is filled with the tone of the birds singing. I am awake, but I am still in a state of half-sleep, a place where the boundaries between reality and dreams are blurred. It is a comfortable place to be, and I am in no hurry to leave it. I think of the evening that lies ahead, the way I will wake up and prepare for another shift. I will put on my boots and my cloak, and I will walk back to the academy, the familiar path, a comfort to me. I will enter the vault, and I will begin my work, once again, the cycle of my life, continuing as it always has. It is a simple life, but it is one that I am content with. The air in the room is still and quiet, the only movement being the slow rise and fall of my chest. I am completely relaxed, now my mind a blank slate ready to be filled with the images of my dreams. I am ready to let go, to surrender to the peace and quiet of the morning. I am ready to sleep. I can feel the weight of my body pressing into the mattress, the way it seems to melt into the fabric. It is a wonderful feeling, one that I have grown to love over the years. It is the feeling of being home, of being safe, and of being at peace. I am a lucky man to have found such a place, and I am grateful for every moment I spend here. As I finally drift into a deep and restful sleep, I am aware of the presence of the Academy, rising above me like a silent sentinel. It is a constant in my life, a place of mystery and wonder that will always be a part of me. And as the sun continues its journey across the sky, I sleep on dreaming of blue light and stone, and the quiet beauty of the vault. This measure of my days is a steady one, and I find comfort in its predictability. Each evening brings its own tasks, and each morning its own rest. The Academy remains a place of study and wonder, while I remain its quiet servant. The balance is maintained and the work goes on, just as it should. I will wake when the shadows grow long again, and the first stars appear in the sky. I will light my candle and step out into the cool evening atmosphere, ready to face the quiet hours once more. The world may change around me, but the vault will always be there, and I will always be there to watch over it. There is a certain peace in knowing your place in the landscape and in doing your duty with care and respect. I have found my place, and I am content to stay here for as long as I am needed. The cycle is complete, and the new shift is only a few hours away, waiting for me to return. Thank you for spending this evening with me. Until next time on Canon and Calm, sleep well.